Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm so excited to share what's happening with reading and your child in school right now. A lot's been happening, and now that we're back from all our breaks, we are starting to take off. So let me start with saying that we worked the first half of the year on learning letters and all the sounds that we make for each letter. Currently, I think they pretty much all know those. We do have some BD reversals, and we use that little bed trick to help learn that and discriminate between the two. But what we're doing right now, I tell them, is we're continuing to practice those because we want to overlearn them so that when their brain sees a letter, they don't have to think, oh, now is that a V or a W? And they don't have to think about what sound it is. This brain automatically helps them make the sound and they can get to the decoding part. So we continue each day a little bit here and there, many different ways to practice the names of the letters and their sounds. They've also been working on learning vowels this year. And they also know the word consonants and learning about CVC words. But some things for you to know, we've taught them that vowels make two sounds, the A, E, I, O, U. And the short sound is the one they make when the vowel is by themselves. We have a little poster I'll show you here that we use where we practice the vowel sounds, the short sounds, and we go apple, and we have our keyword here to help us. So those will be the short sounds they use when they're by themselves, like in the CVC words. But vowels also make a long sound. We call that saying their name. And I use that interchangeably. But there's going to be another vowel with them making that vowel say its long sound. They'll learn more about that next year. But we're starting to hear and listen for the difference between now, is that vowel making its short sound where it's by itself, or is it making its long sound? There's another vowel. Sometimes when they're in their writing, they'll say, oh, they'll say that vowel's making its long sound if there's another vowel. And I will show them just so that they can start to be exposed to it with the vowel teams, or called Super Read. It'll jump one over consonant, and if there's a vowel, make it say its name. But so we're learning a lot about vowels and consonants. We also have been doing a lot of oral blending. So we began with the chopping, that it would be in the Haggerty program, where I would go, let's listen to this word and blend it. Tap. We've also done it this way. Bag. So they were just practicing hearing sounds, remembering the sounds, and then blending them together to tell a word. If they can do that, then they're able to start to be able to read them, where it's one step more where they have to add the sound to the letters they see. So we add that visual piece, and we call this decoding, where they look at the letter, they make the sound for that letter, they remember it, and then they blend them together to tell the word. So we were practicing that a lot, and they're getting very proficient at that. We've started where we would say the sounds out loud, where we gum. Now they're transitioning to where they're saying it inside their head, and then saying gum. We're also working on fluency. So for those who are getting really good at reading CVC words, I'm telling them we're practicing so they get really speedy, super easy, and decoding is really easy for them. That's going to help them read CVC words, but also bigger words, because when we read bigger words, we chunk them into parts and they need to blend each part. So blending is so fundamental that we want it to become like an automatic skill. So that's why we just keep practicing, even though you say, well, my child already has this, what's next? Still working on what we call the fluency, becoming very automatic. We've been working on the handwriting this year. We started with the lowercase letters. We use those the most. We only use uppercase at the beginning of a sentence or beginning of a name. And they know that. We've talked about that a lot, but we practice the lowercase. We're working on the size. There's still room for working on learning some of those, like that the J goes all the way down to the worm line, all the way down. It's a way down low letter. And that the uppercase, is this big, where the lowercase are maybe this big. So working on the lines and the sizing and where they sit on the line. So we're continuing to practice that. We also went through and we're working on the uppercase. They tend to come in knowing a lot of the uppercase. That's easier, more straight lines. They tend to practice those. The problem is if they learn them incorrectly is breaking that habit. They get used to making it a certain way. So we've been working. The lowercase letters tend to have a lot more of the tracing back, or if you go down and then back up, where uppercase, you tend to draw the line, lift your pen, and go back up to the next starting spot. So for some, it's hard to transition back and forth. So we just really continue in many fun ways and many practices to work on the uppercase and lowercase. There are some papers that explain some of the letters in the back of their red folder currently this month, and some lined paper where you can practice some of those as well. Once it starts warming up even more, you can use chalk, you can use sidewalk chalk. We'd like to do fun things like smelly markers. We do it in shaving cream on the table. So just mixing it up a little bit and having some fun. And that's something you can work on, when your child shows interest at home. Then as we were learning all this information about letters and sounds and how to read words, we also have been learning how to write them. So decoding is the reading of CVC words. Encoding is when you listen for the sounds and then you write the word. So that would be the writing piece. So I call these our tappers. And first we like to tap out the sounds. We had done it this way in Heggerty, where we're breaking down the individual sounds and being able to pull those apart, which is a skill which took a little work, but I think they all have it now. But for instance, if I would go l, ah, p. So this was the beginning sound. This was the vowel, that middle sound, and ap. That was the ending sound. Then we can say, okay, what said ul and l? We can write it l, a, p, p, writing them. So we're teaching them how to write CVC words, and that helps just reinforce all those letters, sounds, the different individual sounds of a word, putting it together, pulling it apart. We've been doing a lot of playing with these words as we've been learning them. This is what I call a word ladder. We did these the other day at workstations. They were actually doing the writing. This is one that's already written. But we would write a word in the yellow. I would say, we're going to write hug, tap it, hug. We wrote it. And I said, well, now let's change the first letter to t. So in Heggerty, we do that. Hug, take off the h, put a t. Now it's tug. So then we realized, and then I said, we're going to change one letter. So we go up a step. Let's change the beginning sound to take off the t and put a Now what's the word? Mug. And then we did bug. So we were just changing the first sound. They were like, oh, look, they all have a UG. I'm like, yeah, they're on the UG family. And then we would erase it and do a different word. So we can also do this where you write a word and let's say we put bug. And let's take out the vowel and change it to an A. Oh, change one letter makes a new word. Oh, what's the new word now? All right. Ag. Oh, let's take the G off and put a T. Now what's the word? So you're just being able to play, manipulate, and easily read those words. That's going to help them so much as they're working in their reading, especially of the bigger words. So that's something we've been doing a lot of, and just in workstations and throughout our day. So as we're becoming really proficient with our real CVC words, now we're starting to read nonsense words. Now, these are also CVC words, 3 letters, consonant, vowel, consonant, but they are not real words. So let me show you some here, like this one, ez, vez. There's another one, nub. So even though it's not a real word, they still need to be able to make the sounds and blend it together. And you might be wondering, well, why in the world are they doing that? And this helps them later as they're reading big words. Like, for instance, the word rabbit. There are 6 letters in here, and there's the r, the a, b, it. There's 5 sounds. Our brain is not able to remember all those sounds. If we go r, a, b, it. So we chunk it down in little parts. Now, if this is rab, it might not sound like a real word, but later, if you were to see that in a real word, when we're doing the little chunks, it would make sense and could make it into a real word. So we're training them now how later they'll be able to break down words and do it in syllables and chunks. And each part might not sound like a real word, but when you put it together, it will. So we're just making sure that they can decode any part of a CVC word, whether it's real or make-believe. We'll call them nonsense, silly, make-believe. So we're going to be practicing those in school here the next couple weeks as well. We've also been learning trick words, or sometimes we call them heart words as well. There are high frequency words. High frequency words are words that you are going to see often in reading, like the and on and is. Many of those you can decode, but there are some that are irregular that do not follow the code, or at least part of the word does not follow the code. And so we are showing them and helping their brain to be able to map or figure out this part. So once your brain sees the word, you talk about the patterns like is, okay? I don't have this written down here. Let me write is for you. I thought I had everything, sorry. All right, so here's is. In the word is, the I follows the sound patterns, but this is, it sounds more like a Z. So this is the part your brain's going to have to remember by heart. This part you can decode. So we walk them through kind of making a map, talking about the parts that are regular, the parts they're going to need to learn by heart. And with overexposure, your brain is going to start to recognize those parts and remember it, and no longer going to need to sound it out. It's committed to memory. It's not just a thing of we want to memorize. In order to get it into the long-term memory and for your brain to really understand it, you need to work through it, the structure, and use the phonics, but also talk about the part that you are going to have to learn a little bit by memory. And the more your brain's exposed to it, the more it's going to be able to recognize it and then commit it to the long term memory. Sight words are words that you can recognize by sight. The more your brain sees all these words, the more they know them by sight. If you consider when you're reading, you can read most words because your brain has committed them to long-term memory and can recognize them. Those are your sight words. And then it comes to a word maybe you don't know, and then you will decode it. So that's how your brain is working through the words rather than just trying to memorize all of them. It actually goes through the patterns and makes that connection in your brain. So we will call those trick words and heart words. We're learning ones that we need right now to read our decodables, the Half Pint Kid books, so that we need some of these high frequency words to make sentences. We can't just make sentences with all CVC words. So we're learning them as we go, working with them. We were using sound boxes the other day. This one has two sounds. I, s, is two sounds. So this would have two boxes. So we're working with those as well. And then we're starting to apply it all to read our decodable books. So I love the Half Pint Kid books because they really match the CVC words and just needs a minimal amount of high frequency words in order for us to read them. And some of those are even regular, so you can sound them out. But what we're doing is we're applying their knowledge on how to read CVC words. They're able to start to recognize some of their trick words, like I and A are technically a trick word because I typically, when it's by itself, just says I, but there's no other vowel to make it say I, but it's making its long sound. So we have to remember, and same with A, that's considered a trick word, but we can read those words. We're starting to have some sight words as we're starting to read. We're also working on reading fluently. Like, so when we see a word on one page, maybe our brain can remember it on the next page, and that we're becoming more fluent. As your child is reading these, we always tell them readers don't guess. They use the sounds. If you have to work on a spot in a sentence and it takes you a while because you had to maybe decode a word or two, it's really great to go back and read that sentence again to sound smooth and to make sure that you understand what it says. If you read something that doesn't make sense, that probably means you made a mistake. Also, if I were having a student read this and they said, I got in the mub, I would look at it and go, did that look right? Did that sound right? Make sense? And then see if they can self-correct and notice, oh no, so that we're building that self-correcting skills for their own reading as they're reading more and more independently. So we have these that we're reading as a class, they're practicing at bear time, and now they're bringing them home. So they're getting to apply all that they have been learning. And I do like the little comprehension questions that to just make sure that they understand a story has meaning and they can be able to tell about it. Later, they'll be reading longer books and being able to tell about what they read in those books as well, just because of the things they learned in kindergarten. Some other things that we're going to be doing later in the year, we're going to be moving on to digraphs. These have two letters, but one sound. So we'll be learning these. The CK is at the end of the word. And then we're going to apply these to words, like maybe the word shop. So it's sh, that's an SH, ah, puh. So they've kind of heard some of these already and starting to be exposed, like Thursday has a TH, and many, many words have CH, SH, and TH. And they're starting to see it a little bit in journals and hearing us talk about it. SH is probably the easiest to learn. But we will be working on all these digraphs. We also have a CK rule that our program teaches them, which I kind of had to learn this one too. I didn't remember this rule, and we'll be hanging this up. But the C, when we hear the k, k, sound correctly right now, they will say, is that a C or is that a K? But then they can learn the rule. K, k, k. And most of the time it will follow this rule that if it's an A, O, or U vowel that you hear later in that word, it's going to be the C. But if you hear an E or an I vowel sound, it's going to be a K. So that's kind of a tricky rule, but that is something we introduce in the Foundations program in kindergarten. And then we can use that in our writing a little bit as we look at that up on the wall. So as this year continues, we plan to keep reading CVC words, real, nonsense, applying them, reading the decodables, and just getting really fluent, comfortable, finding lots of success and building that firm foundation. We're kind of going slow and just going deeper. And that's going to help them actually go faster later, rather than just kind of quickly glossing over things and just jumping in and moving ahead super fast. Some might be more ready to move on. Some might a lot more practice, but everything we do does not hurt, and it makes them even all stronger. And that's what I tell them we're building our reading brain. So we are just building that reading brain and making it so strong as we're becoming these reading detectives I was telling you about, and learning all the secret code of how this reading works. And right now they're busy looking carefully at words, which I say good readers do. They're showing me all these, oh, there's a trick word. Oh, I saw a trick word in a book. And they're starting to apply everything they learned. So I'm hoping you're enjoying seeing all this unfold at home as well. If you have any questions anytime while your child's reading, or what should you be doing, please ask. No question is a stupid question, and I would love to support you because I know you can support me and your child as well. So thanks for taking the time to watch this video, and take care.